The klaxon's wail pierced through the hushed silence of mission control, startling Dr. Samantha Chen from her focused trance. Her eyes, bloodshot from hours of staring at scrolling data, darted to the main screen where an urgent message flashed. Human kin no buen sign DETCTE. Possible extraterrestrial origin. Samantha's heart raced as she processed the implications. After years of searching the cosmos for signs of intelligent life, humanity might finally have its answer. But the jubilation was short-lived as the nature of the signal became clear. It was a distress call. "What do we know?" she asked, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. Mission Director Javed Ahmadi's fingers flew across his console. "The signal's coming from just beyond Mars' orbit. It's weak, but we're picking up some kind of propulsion signature. Whatever it is, it's big. And it's failing fast." Samantha nodded, her mind already racing through possibilities. As the lead engineer for NASA's Deep Space Propulsion Program, she knew better than anyone the challenges of interstellar travel. If an advanced alien civilization was having trouble this close to Earth, the situation had to be dire. "We need to mount a rescue mission," she said, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. Javed looked at her incredulously. "With what? Our nearest vessel is months away, and we have no idea what we'd be dealing with." Samantha's eyes gleamed with determination. The Prometheus. A hush fell over mission control. The Prometheus was Samantha's brainchild, an experimental rescue vessel equipped with a revolutionary propulsion system. It was fast, maneuverable, and completely untested in real-world conditions. "It's not ready," Jave protested. "We haven't even done a full systems check." "It's ready enough," Samantha countered, "and it's our only shot at reaching them in time." For a long moment, Jave held her gaze, weighing the enormous risk against the potential of first contact. Finally, he nodded. "I'll need a pilot." Samantha took a deep breath. "You're looking at her." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. As the Prometheus was prepped for launch, Samantha underwent a crash course in basic piloting and emergency protocols. The plan was simple: intercept the alien vessel, assess the situation, and render whatever assistance they could. As Samantha strapped herself into the pilot's seat, doubt gnawed at her. She was an engineer, not an astronaut. But as the countdown began, she pushed her fears aside. This was the moment she had been working towards her entire life. The launch was textbook perfect, the Prometheus's experimental engine purring to life with a power that pressed Samantha back into her seat. As Earth shrank behind her, a giddy excitement replaced her nervousness. She was really doing this, flying into the unknown to make first contact with an alien species. It took less than an hour to reach the source of the distress signal. As the Prometheus decelerated, Samantha got her first glimpse of the alien ship. It was massive, easily 10 times the size of her vessel, with an organic, almost insectoid design that defied human engineering principles. "This is Dr. Samantha Chen of the Earth vessel Prometheus," she broadcast, hoping the aliens had some way of understanding her. "We've received your distress call and are here to render assistance." For several tense moments, there was no response. Then, a garbled transmission came through, the words unintelligible, but the tone unmistakably urgent. Samantha maneuvered the Prometheus closer, scanning for any obvious signs of damage. That's when she noticed the strange shimmer surrounding the alien ship, some kind of energy field that seemed to be destabilizing. Before she could react, the field pulsed violently. The Prometheus's sensors screamed warnings as it was caught in the gravitational wake. Samantha's hands flew over the controls, fighting to keep the ship stable, but it was no use. The Prometheus, along with the massive alien vessel, was being pulled into a spatial rift that had opened behind them. The last thing Samantha saw before losing consciousness was a swirling vortex of impossible colors and the realization that she was about to go much further than Mars. When Samantha came to, her first sensation was pain, a dull ache that seemed to permeate every cell in her body, As her vision cleared, she became aware of her surroundings. The Prometheus's cabin was dark, illuminated only by the faint emergency lighting. Outside the view screen, an alien landscape stretched as far as the eye could see. Gone was the familiar backdrop of stars and the comforting blue marble of Earth. Instead, twin suns hung low on the horizon, bathing the rocky terrain in an eerie purple glow. Jagged mountains pierced the sky in the distance, their peaks obscured by swirling, iridescent clouds. "Prometheus to mission control," Samantha croaked, her throat dry and raw. "Come in, mission control." Only static answered her call. Whatever had happened during their passage through the rift, it had fried the ship's long-range communications. She was alone, stranded on an alien world with no way to contact Earth. As the reality of her situation sank in, Samantha felt a momentary surge of panic. But years of training kicked in, pushing fear aside in favor of rational thought. First things first, she needed to assess the damage to the Prometheus and determine if it was salvageable. A quick systems check revealed the extent of the problem. The experimental engine was offline, likely overloaded by the strain of the rift passage. Life support was functioning, but at reduced capacity. If she couldn't find a way to repair the ship or signal for help, she had maybe a week before things got desperate. Samantha unstrapped herself from the pilot's seat, wincing at the protest from her battered body. As she moved through the cabin, running diagnostics and taking stock of her supplies, a glint of metal outside caught her eye. There, half buried in the alien soil, was a piece of the much larger ship she had been trying to rescue. It seemed they had both crash-landed on this strange world, which meant that somewhere out there might be survivors, beings who could help her get home, or at least shed some light on where exactly here was. Determination set in. She was Dr. Samantha Chen, the engineer who had designed the most advanced propulsion system in human history. If anyone could find a way off this alien rock, it was her. Samantha gathered what supplies she could carry and sealed her suit. With a deep breath, she cycled the airlock and stepped out onto the surface of an alien world. The ground crunched beneath her boots, a fine crystalline sand that sparkled in the purple sunlight. The air, while breathable according to her sensors, carried an acrid tang that made her glad for the suit's filtration system. As she trudged towards the glinting metal in the distance, Samantha's mind raced with possibilities. What kind of beings had she encountered? Would they be friendly or hostile? And most pressingly, would they have the means to help her return to Earth? The trek took longer than she anticipated, the alien landscape playing tricks with her depth perception. By the time she reached the crash site, the twin suns had begun to set, casting long shadows across the desolate plain. The alien ship was a mangled mess of twisted metal and strange, organic-looking components. As Samantha approached, she noticed movement among the wreckage. Her heart pounded as she prepared for her first face-to-face encounter with an extraterrestrial being. A figure emerged from behind a large piece of debris, and Samantha's breath caught in her throat. The alien was tall, easily 7 feet, with a slender, almost spindly build. Its skin was a mottled green-gray, and a series of tentacle-like appendages framed a face that was at once familiar and utterly alien. The being's large, multifaceted eyes fixed on Samantha, and she saw her own wonder and apprehension mirrored back at her. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, two beings from vastly different worlds united by circumstance and the universal language of survival. Then, to Samantha's amazement, the alien spoke. The words were unintelligible, a series of clicks and whistles, but the tone was unmistakably one of relief and gratitude. As the last rays of the alien suns dipped below the horizon, Samantha realized that her mission had changed. She was no longer just an engineer trying to get home. She was humanity's ambassador to the stars, and the key to both their species' survival. With a tentative smile, she extended her hand in a universal gesture of peace. "I'm Samantha," she said, knowing the alien couldn't understand her words, but hoping it would grasp her intent. "And I think we have a lot of work to do." The alien's tentacle-like appendage wrapped gently around Samantha's outstretched hand, its touch surprisingly warm through her suit's glove. The gesture seemed to break the tension, and the alien's multifaceted eyes crinkled in what Samantha hoped was a smile. "Jisk-tik," the alien said, tapping its chest with a free appendage. Samantha nodded, understanding it was trying to introduce itself. "Jisk-tik," she repeated, the name feeling strange on her tongue. She tapped her own chest. "Samantha." The alien's head tilted, its tentacles rippling in what seemed like amusement. "Samantha," it attempted, the name coming out as a series of whistles and clicks. Despite the gravity of their situation, Samantha found herself grinning. Here she was, light years from home, having a conversation with an alien. It was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. Their moment of connection was interrupted by a low rumble in the distance. Both Samantha and Jisk-tik turned to see storm clouds gathering on the horizon, flashes of lightning illuminating their roiling surface. Jisk-tik made an urgent chattering sound, gesturing towards the wreckage of its ship. Samantha nodded, understanding the need for shelter. Together, they worked to create a makeshift refuge from the debris, the alien's multiple limbs proving incredibly useful in manipulating the strange materials of its vessel. As the storm hit, bringing with it pelting crystals that pinged off their shelter like hail, Samantha took stock of their situation. She had basic supplies from the Prometheus: food, water, and some tools. Jisk-tik seemed to have salvaged some equipment from its own ship, though Samantha could only guess at their function. Communication was their biggest challenge. Without a common language, coordinating their efforts to survive and potentially escape this alien world would be nearly impossible. Samantha's mind raced, trying to come up with a solution. Then it hit her. She was an engineer after all. Maybe she couldn't build a universal translator, but she could create a rudimentary communication system. As the storm raged outside, Samantha got to work. Using her tablet, she began creating simple pictograms: a sun for day, a moon for night, stick figures for themselves. She showed each image to Jisk-tik, saying the word aloud and encouraging the alien to do the same. To her amazement, Jisk-tik caught on quickly. It even began suggesting its own symbols, using a claw-like appendage to sketch in the dust on the floor of their shelter. Hours passed as they built their shared vocabulary, the storm outside fading into background noise. By the time the twin suns rose again, painting the alien sky in shades of deep crimson and gold, Samantha and Jisk-tik had developed a basic means of communication. It was crude, relying heavily on gestures and drawings, but it was a start. Their first order of business was to assess the damage to both their ships. Jisk-tik led Samantha to what remained of its vessel's control center, a dizzying array of organic-looking interfaces that pulsed with dim light. Through their improvised sign language, Jisk-tik conveyed that its ship's power source was severely damaged. Without it, there was no hope of repair or sending a distress signal. Samantha's heart sank. The Prometheus's experimental engine was in no better shape, its delicate components fused beyond repair by the stress of their passage through the rift. But as Samantha surveyed the alien technology surrounding her, an idea began to form. The principles might be different, the materials unlike anything she'd worked with before, but at its core, this was still a machine. And machines, no matter how advanced, followed rules. Rules that could be understood and perhaps bent to their advantage. With renewed determination, Samantha turned to Jisk-tik. Through a combination of drawings and gestures, she conveyed her intention to study the alien ship's systems. She needed to understand how they worked if there was any hope of cobbling together a solution from their limited resources. Jisk-tik's reaction was unexpected. The alien's tentacles writhed in what Samantha had come to recognize as agitation, and it made a series of sharp, staccato clicks. It took several attempts at communication before Samantha understood the problem. The ship's technology was sacred to Jisk-tik's people. Allowing an outsider, an alien, to examine it went against everything they believed. Samantha's heart sank. How could she convince the alien that this taboo needed to be broken if they were to have any chance of survival? In that moment of frustration, Samantha was struck by a memory. Years ago, during her postdoc work, she had been part of a cultural exchange program with a remote tribe in the Amazon. The tribe had initially been resistant to the researchers' presence, viewing their equipment with suspicion and fear. It was only after Samantha had demonstrated the practical benefits of some of their technology, using a water filtration system to purify a contaminated stream, that the tribe had begun to open up. Maybe the same approach could work here. With renewed purpose, Samantha set to work. Using parts salvaged from the Prometheus, she began constructing a simple device, a solar-powered water purifier. The twin suns of this alien world were intense, and she suspected that fresh water might be scarce. As she worked, Jistik watched with obvious curiosity. Samantha made a point of narrating her actions, even though she knew the alien couldn't understand her words. The process of creation, she hoped, would transcend their language barrier. Hours passed as Samantha tinkered, adjusted, and refined her invention. Finally, as the suns began to set once more, she was ready for a demonstration. She beckoned Jistik to follow her outside their shelter. The alien landscape was beginning to feel almost familiar now, its harsh beauty growing on Samantha. She led Jistik to a small pool of stagnant water she had noticed earlier. Using her suit's sensors, she showed the alien the high levels of contaminants in the liquid. Then, with a flourish that felt a bit silly but seemed to capture Jistik's attention, Samantha activated her makeshift purifier. The device hummed to life, its jury-rigged components working in harmony to filter the alien water. Jistik's multifaceted eyes widened as Samantha presented a container of now clean water. The alien's tentacles waved in what Samantha hoped was excitement as it examined the purifier, chittering rapidly in its own language. Seizing the moment, Samantha gestured towards the wreckage of Jistik's ship. She pantomimed working together, then pointed to the sky. The message was clear. If they combined their knowledge, they might find a way off this planet. For a long moment, Jistik was silent, its alien features unreadable. Then, slowly, it extended a tentacle towards Samantha. But instead of grasping her hand as it had done before, it pointed towards the ship and nodded its bulbous head. Samantha's heart soared. She had done it. She had bridged the gap between their species, not with words, but with the universal language of innovation and problem-solving. As they made their way back to the wreckage, a new sense of purpose energizing their steps, Samantha couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. She might not be the kind of engineer who could pilot a spaceship or fight off alien invaders, but she had something just as valuable: the ability to adapt, to create, to find solutions where others saw only problems. Together, human and alien, they stepped into the remains of the ship. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Samantha was confident they would face them with the combined strength of 2 worlds' worth of ingenuity. Little did she know, the greatest test of her skills, and of the fledgling trust between her and Jistik, was yet to come. As the twin suns set on their alien world, casting long shadows across the desolate landscape, neither of them noticed the faint, pulsing light emanating from deep within the wreckage. A light that would soon lead them to a discovery that would change everything. The days that followed were a blur of activity for Samantha and Jistik. With the initial barriers of trust broken down, they threw themselves into the monumental task of understanding and potentially repairing the alien ship systems. It was slow, painstaking work, fraught with misunderstandings and setbacks, but Samantha found herself thriving on the challenge. Each new discovery about the alien technology left her in awe. The ship's systems were a seamless blend of organic and mechanical components, operating on principles that defied Earth physics. Samantha's notebook quickly filled with diagrams and equations as she struggled to make sense of it all. Jistik proved to be an invaluable partner, its multiple limbs and intimate knowledge of the ship's workings complementing Samantha's problem-solving skills perfectly. They developed a rhythm, working in tandem to tackle each new obstacle that arose. It was during one of their marathon work sessions, as they were elbow-deep, or in Jistik's case, tentacle-deep, in a particularly complex piece of equipment, that they made the discovery that would change everything. Samantha had been attempting to trace the ship's power distribution system, hoping to find a way to reroute energy to the communications array. Her hand brushed against a panel she hadn't noticed before, and suddenly, the entire section of the ship hummed to life. Jistik let out a startled whistle, its tentacles flaring in surprise. Samantha stepped back, her heart racing as she watched a holographic display flicker into existence before them. The image was grainy and distorted, but unmistakably a star map. Glowing points of light connected by pulsing lines filled the air, creating a three-dimensional representation of what Samantha could only assume was this part of the galaxy. But it was what lay at the center of the map that truly took her breath away. A massive structure, unlike anything she had ever seen or imagined, rotated slowly in place. It was a lattice of interconnected rings and spokes, stretching across what must have been thousands of kilometers of space. Jistik's reaction was immediate and intense. The alien began chittering excitedly, its tentacles weaving complex patterns in the air as it attempted to convey something to Samantha. She caught snippets of their shared pictorial language: old, power, home. But the full meaning eluded her. Over the next few hours, through a frustrating process of gestures, drawings, and trial and error, Samantha began to piece together the significance of their discovery. The structure they had seen was ancient, predating even Jistik's civilization. It was some kind of massive transportation hub or gateway, capable of moving ships vast distances across the galaxy in the blink of an eye. More importantly, it was the key to getting them both home. But there was a catch. The gateway had been dormant for millennia, its location lost to time. The map they had uncovered was incomplete, missing crucial data needed to pinpoint the structure's exact position. As Samantha absorbed this information, a mix of emotions washed over her. Excitement at the prospect of a way home warred with the daunting realization of the task ahead. They would need to find a way to complete the map, locate the gateway, and somehow reactivate technology so advanced it might as well be magic. And they would have to do it all before their limited supplies ran out. The gravity of the situation settled over them like a heavy blanket. Samantha and Jistik looked at each other, a moment of shared understanding passing between human and alien. They were no longer just trying to survive or send a distress signal. They were embarking on a quest that could reshape the future of both their species. With renewed determination, they threw themselves back into their work. Days blended into nights as they pored over the ship's databases, searching for any clue that might help complete the star map. Samantha's engineering skills were pushed to their limits as she jury-rigged interfaces between her Earth technology and the alien systems, creating makeshift tools to analyze the vast amounts of data. Jistik, for its part, proved to be a fountain of knowledge about its people's legends and history. Through their improving communication, the alien shared stories of the ancients who had built the gateway, tales passed down through generations, but long dismissed as myth. As they worked, Samantha couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. Just weeks ago, they had been strangers, separated by a gulf of biology and culture that seemed insurmountable. Now, they moved in sync, anticipating each other's needs and building on each other's ideas with an efficiency that bordered on telepathic. It was during one of their rare breaks, as they sat watching the alien world's stunning double sunset, that Samantha had an epiphany. She had been idly sketching in the dirt, trying to visualize a particularly complex set of coordinates they had uncovered. Jistik watched curiously, its tentacles swaying gently in the warm breeze. Samantha's hand froze mid-motion as she stared at the pattern she had drawn. It was familiar, tugging at the edges of her memory. With a jolt, she realized where she had seen it before, in the rock formations surrounding their crash site. Excitement bubbling up inside her, Samantha grabbed her tablet and pulled up the topographical scans she had taken of the area in those first few days. There, hidden in plain sight, was a pattern that matched a section of their incomplete star map. She turned to Jistik, her eyes wide with the implications of her discovery. This planet, this seemingly random world they had crashed on, wasn't random at all. It was a waypoint, a cosmic signpost left behind by the ancients. As she struggled to convey her realization to Jistik, Samantha's mind raced ahead. If this planet held clues to completing the map, there might be others. The gateway might be closer to activation than they had dared hope. But their breakthrough brought new challenges. The information they needed was out there, scattered across the planet's surface. They would need to venture beyond the relative safety of their crash site, braving whatever dangers this alien world might hold. Moreover, as Jistik made clear through a series of agitated gestures, they weren't alone on this planet. In the distance, beyond the mountains that ringed their valley, lived beings that Jistik's people had long ago dismissed as primitive and hostile. If Samantha and Jistik were to unlock the secrets of this world, they would have to risk encountering these unknown natives. As night fell, bringing with it a dazzling display of unfamiliar constellations, Samantha and Jistik sat in contemplative silence. The path ahead was clear, but fraught with danger. They would need all of their combined skills, knowledge, and newfound trust in each other to succeed. Samantha looked at her alien companion, marveling at how much had changed. She had come to this world to be a rescuer, only to find herself in need of rescue. She had feared isolation, only to forge a friendship that transcended species. And now she stood on the brink of a discovery that could change the course of history for both their peoples. As the first of the planet's 3 moons rose over the horizon, casting a pale blue light across the alien landscape, Samantha made a silent vow. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dangers they might face, she would see this through. Not just for herself, or for Earth, but for Jistik and the promise of a future where their 2 species might stand together among the stars. Little did she know, as she drifted off to sleep that night, that their greatest test was yet to come. For in the mountains beyond their valley, ancient eyes had noticed the disturbance in their world. Eyes that belonged to beings far less primitive than anyone suspected, and who guarded secrets that could make or break Samantha and Jistik's quest to activate the gateway and find their way home. The alien dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of deep purple and crimson. Samantha emerged from their makeshift shelter, her muscles aching from another night spent on the hard ground. Beside her, Jistik's tentacles unfurled slowly, the alien equivalent of a morning stretch. Today was the day. After weeks of preparation, they were ready to venture beyond the safety of their crash site in search of the clues that would complete their star map. Samantha double-checked her pack, mentally ticking off their supplies: water purifiers, emergency rations, basic medical supplies, and a hodgepodge of equipment cobbled together from both human and alien technology. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. Jistik chittered softly, drawing Samantha's attention to the mountain range looming in the distance. The alien's multifaceted eyes seemed to shimmer with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Samantha nodded, understanding the unspoken message. Whatever lay beyond those peaks, they would face it together. As they set out, the alien landscape slowly transformed around them. The barren, rocky terrain of their crash site gave way to patches of strange, iridescent vegetation. Samantha marveled at plants that seemed to shift color as they passed, and fungi that emitted soft pulses of bioluminescence. By midday, they had reached the foothills of the mountains. The climb was arduous, the alien gravity making each step a challenge for Samantha. Jistik, with its multiple limbs and more adaptive physiology, fared better, often reaching back to offer Samantha support on particularly treacherous sections. As they ascended, Samantha's tablet beeped insistently. The topographical patterns were growing stronger, confirming they were on the right track. But with each step, the feeling of being watched intensified. It was Jistik who spotted them first, a flash of movement among the rocks, too deliberate to be the wind. Samantha froze, her heart pounding as she scanned their surroundings. For a moment, all was still. Then, as if materializing from the very stone itself, they appeared. The beings were unlike anything Samantha had ever seen or imagined. They were tall, easily twice her height, with bodies that seemed to be a fusion of crystal and organic matter. Their forms shimmered and shifted, at times nearly invisible against the rocky backdrop. Samantha's mind raced, trying to process what she was seeing. These weren't the primitive hostiles Jizktik had warned about. This was something else entirely, something far more advanced. The crystalline beings surrounded them, their faceted surfaces reflecting the alien sunlight in dazzling patterns. Samantha felt Jizktik press close to her, its tentacles quivering with tension. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, one of the beings stepped forward. It raised what Samantha assumed was an arm, revealing a complex array of crystalline structures that hummed with energy. Samantha's breath caught in her throat. Was this a weapon? A greeting? She had no way to know. Slowly, carefully, she raised her own hands, palms out in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. To her amazement, the being mimicked her gesture. Then it did something truly astonishing. The crystals on its body rearranged, forming patterns that Samantha recognized from their star map. Excitement surged through her. These beings weren't just native inhabitants. They were connected to the ancients, perhaps even descendants of the very civilization that had built the gateway. With trembling hands, Samantha reached for her tablet. She pulled up their incomplete star map and held it out, hoping the beings would understand. The leader, if that's what it was, stepped closer. Its crystalline body hummed and pulsed, and suddenly, a holographic projection appeared in the air between them. It was their star map, but complete, filled with data that Samantha and Jizktik had been missing. Jizktik let out a series of rapid clicks, its tentacles waving in what Samantha had come to recognize as excitement. She felt it too, a surge of hope and possibility that made her lightheaded. But their elation was short-lived. No sooner had the map appeared than it vanished, the crystalline being stepping back to rejoin its companions. Samantha's heart sank. They had been so close. Then, the being made another gesture. This time, Samantha understood immediately. It was an invitation to follow. As they were led deeper into the mountains, Samantha's mind whirled with questions. Who were these beings? Why had they remained hidden? And most importantly, would they help activate the gateway? The journey took them through a series of caverns, each more spectacular than the last. The walls pulsed with the same energy Samantha had seen in the beings, creating an ever-shifting landscape of light and shadow. Finally, they emerged into a vast chamber. At its center stood a structure that made Samantha gasp. It was a perfect miniature of the gateway they had seen in the holographic map. The crystalline beings arranged themselves around the structure, their bodies humming in unison. The air crackled with energy, and the miniature gateway began to glow. Samantha watched in awe as streams of data flowed from the beings into the structure. She realized with a start that they weren't just showing them the map, they were updating it in real time, accounting for stellar drift and cosmic events over millennia. But as the process continued, Samantha noticed something alarming. The crystalline beings were dimming, their once brilliant surfaces growing dull. With a jolt of horror, she realized what was happening. They were sacrificing their own energy, perhaps their very life force, to power the gateway. Jizktik had noticed too. The alien turned to Samantha, its eyes conveying a clear message. We have to stop this. Samantha nodded, her mind racing. She was an engineer, damn it. There had to be a solution, a way to power the gateway without sacrificing these incredible beings. Her eyes darted around the chamber, taking in every detail. The crystalline structure of the walls, the energy flows, the alien technology. Suddenly, it clicked. The entire mountain was a giant geothermal energy collector designed by the ancients to power the gateway. But over time, it had fallen into disrepair, forcing the crystalline beings to use their own energy as a substitute. With renewed determination, Samantha pulled out her tools. She turned to Zhiktik, gesturing frantically as she tried to convey her plan. The alien's eyes widened in understanding, and together, they set to work. What followed was the greatest test of Samantha's skills she had ever faced. With Zhiktik's help, she rerouted energy flows, repaired ancient circuits, and improvised solutions to problems she barely understood. The crystalline beings watched in silent fascination as human and alien worked in perfect synchronization. Hours passed in a blur of feverish activity. Samantha's hands were raw, her mind pushed to its limits. But slowly, steadily, the mountain began to awaken. Energy surged through long dormant pathways, the walls of the cavern pulsing with renewed life. With a sound like 1,000 crystal glasses ringing at once, the miniature gateway flared to life. The crystalline beings stepped back, their bodies regaining their former brilliance, as the strain was taken off them. The holographic map reappeared, more detailed and vibrant than ever before. And there, at its heart, was the location of the true gateway, a set of coordinates that represented hope and a way home for both Samantha and Zhiktik. As the reality of their achievements sank in, Samantha felt a wave of emotion wash over her. They had done it, against all odds, with nothing but determination, ingenuity, and trust in each other. They had succeeded where entire civilizations had failed. The crystalline beings approached, their surfaces shimmering with what Samantha could only interpret as gratitude. One of them reached out, gently touching Samantha's forehead. In that moment, a flood of images and sensations poured into her mind. The history of this world, the legacy of the ancients, and a profound sense of hope for the future. When the connection broke, Samantha staggered, overwhelmed by the experience. Zhiktik steadied her with its tentacles, a gesture of support that needed no translation. As they prepared to leave the mountain, armed with the knowledge they needed to find and activate the gateway, Samantha looked back at the crystalline beings. In that moment, she understood that their journey had been about more than just finding a way home. They had forged connections between species, revived ancient technologies, and perhaps set in motion events that would reshape the galaxy. With a heart full of hope and a mind brimming with new possibilities, Samantha stepped out of the mountain chamber. The path ahead was clear, but she knew the greatest challenges and the greatest adventures were yet to come. Little did she know that as they descended the mountain, events were unfolding across the galaxy that would put their newfound alliance to the ultimate test. For the awakening of the ancient technology had not gone unnoticed, and forces both old and new were converging on their location, drawn by the promise of power beyond imagination. The journey back to their crash site was filled with a mixture of triumph and trepidation. Samantha and Zhiktik moved swiftly, their minds racing with the implications of what they had discovered and the monumental task that lay ahead. As they crested the final hill overlooking their makeshift camp, Samantha froze. Something was wrong. The wreckage of their ships, which had become a familiar landmark over the past weeks, was surrounded by a shimmering energy field. Zhiktik let out a low whistle of alarm. Its tentacles gesticulated wildly, conveying a message that Samantha's brain translated with growing dread. Not alone. Danger. They ducked behind a rocky outcropping, hearts pounding. Peering cautiously over the edge, Samantha saw them. Sleek, predatory ships unlike anything she had ever seen. They hovered silently around the crash site, occasionally emitting pulses of energy that seemed to be scanning the area. Scavengers, Zhiktik chittered softly. Bad. Very bad. Samantha's mind raced. All of their work, the vital information they had gathered, was stored in the computers back at the camp. Without it, activating the gateway would be impossible. But how could they hope to retrieve it with these unknown hostiles in the way? As if in answer to her unspoken question, the sky lit up with a brilliant flash. For a moment, Samantha thought the scavengers had spotted them. But the source of the light was much further away and much more powerful. The gateway had activated. In the distance, a massive ring of energy crackled to life, its center a swirling vortex of impossible colors. The scavenger ships reacted immediately, abandoning their search of the crash site and streaking towards the newly opened portal. Samantha and Jisk-Tik exchanged a look of shared understanding. This was their chance, perhaps their only chance. They sprinted towards the camp, caution forgotten in the urgency of the moment. Samantha's lungs burned as she pushed herself to the limit, the alien atmosphere making each breath a struggle. Beside her, Jisk-Tik moved with a fluid grace that belied its awkward appearance. They reached the wreckage just as the last scavenger ship disappeared through the gateway. Samantha dove for her jury-rigged computer setup, frantically initiating the download of their precious data. Each second felt like an eternity as the progress bar slowly filled. A low rumble shook the ground, growing in intensity with each passing moment. Samantha looked up to see the gateway fluctuating wildly, its energy patterns becoming erratic. "It's destabilizing," she shouted to Jisk-Tik, who was gathering what supplies it could. "We need to go now." The download completed with a cheerful ping that seemed absurdly out of place in the chaos. Samantha grabbed the data core and turned to run, only to find her path blocked by a figure that hadn't been there a moment before. It was one of the crystalline beings from the mountain, its faceted surface reflecting the chaotic energies of the failing gateway. Samantha stumbled back in surprise, but the being made no aggressive moves. Instead, it extended a crystalline appendage, offering what looked like a small, glowing shard. Understanding dawned on Samantha. This wasn't just a gift, it was a key. The final piece needed to control the gateway. With trembling hands, she accepted the shard. The moment her fingers closed around it, knowledge flooded her mind. How to stabilize the gateway, how to direct its energies, how to find the path home. There was no time for thanks. The ground was shaking violently now, fissures opening up as the planet itself seemed to react to the gateway's instability. Samantha and Jisk-Tik ran, their disparate physiologies forgotten as they moved in perfect unison towards their only hope of survival. The gateway loomed before them, its swirling vortex both terrifying and mesmerizing. Samantha clutched the crystalline shard tightly, her mind focused on the knowledge it had imparted. As they reached the edge of the energy field, she raised the shard high. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, the chaotic energies of the gateway began to smooth out, the violent fluctuations calming into a steady pulse. Samantha felt a surge of triumph. It was working. But their ordeal wasn't over yet. The gateway was stable, but they still needed to input the correct coordinates to find their way home. And with the planet crumbling around them, they had precious little time to do it. Samantha turned to Jisk-Tik, suddenly realizing the cruel choice before them. The gateway could only be programmed for one destination at a time. Either she would go home, or Jisk-Tik would, but not both. The alien seemed to understand the dilemma as well. Its tentacles moved in a pattern Samantha had never seen before, but the meaning was clear: sacrifice. Before Samantha could protest, Jisk-Tik gently took the shard from her hands. With movements almost too fast to follow, it input a series of commands. The gateway shimmered, and an image of Earth, beautiful, blue, and achingly familiar, appeared in its center. Samantha felt tears welling up in her eyes. After everything they had been through, all they had accomplished together, it was going to end like this. She opened her mouth to argue, to insist that they find another way. But Jisk-Tik silenced her with a gentle touch of its tentacle to her lips. The alien's eyes met hers, conveying a depth of emotion that transcended the barriers of species and language. In that moment, Samantha understood. This wasn't just about getting her home. It was about preserving the knowledge they had gained, about ensuring that the legacy of the ancients and the potential for interstellar cooperation wouldn't be lost. With a heavy heart, Samantha nodded. She reached out, grasping Jisk-Tik's tentacle in a final gesture of friendship. Then, clutching the precious data core to her chest, she stepped towards the gateway. The vortex enveloped her in a rush of light and sensation. For an eternal instant, Samantha felt herself stretched across the vastness of space. Her consciousness expanded to encompass the wonders and terrors of the cosmos. Then, with a jolt that knocked the breath from her lungs, she was back. The familiar gravity of Earth pressed down on her as she collapsed onto soft grass. Above her, the blue sky of home stretched out, achingly beautiful. As the gateway winked out of existence behind her, leaving no trace of the incredible journey she had just endured, Samantha allowed herself a moment of grief for the friend she had left behind. But even as tears rolled down her cheeks, she felt a surge of determination. She struggled to her feet, still clutching the alien data core. There was work to be done. Humanity needed to be prepared for what lay beyond their world. And somewhere out there, Zizktik and countless other species were waiting. Samantha took a deep breath of earth air, her mind already racing with plans and possibilities. She may not have been the kind of engineer who could pilot a spaceship or fight off alien invaders, but she was exactly the kind of engineer humanity needed to face the challenges that lay ahead. As she set off towards the distant silhouette of a city, Samantha allowed herself a small smile. The greatest adventure of her life wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. Epilogue. Years later, as humanity took its first tentative steps into the galactic community, whispers spread of a peculiar duo making waves across the stars. An innovative human engineer, armed with knowledge beyond her years, and a multi-limbed alien with a gift for problem-solving. Together, they traveled from world to world, reactivating ancient gateways and forging alliances between species. And always, they searched for new technologies, for common ground between disparate cultures, and for a way to bridge the vast distances of space and time. Some said they were chasing a myth, a way to recreate the lost network of the ancients. Others claimed they were building something entirely new, a future where the boundaries between species blurred and the galaxy itself was their playground. But those who met them knew the truth. In their eyes burned the inextinguishable fire of discovery, the unshakable bond of a friendship forged in the crucible of survival, and the limitless potential of two minds working as one. In the end, it didn't matter what kind of engineers they were. They were explorers, innovators, and above all, a symbol of hope for a universe that was vast, wondrous, and finally within reach.